Hey there. Welcome back to Tuesday's Tips. I'm Greg Kaiser, and if you've been with me since the beginning, congratulations. This has been a very long process, but as of this one, I think we are pretty much done with the image editing. I've intended on doing a very long set of tutorials dealing specifically with Lightroom, from the basics going into some very specifics, global edits, local edits, that sort of thing. And we finished up last week with the last bit of the brush tutorials that I really wanted to get into. And this week, as I promised, we're going to talk about actually going through a local edit. And in fact, I'm going to do a full edit in real time. So that ought to be pretty exciting. We now know what all the tools do. It's a matter of how to use them all. So the idea here is to take an image, is one I actually shot yesterday, and go from beginning to end on it. It's not the one that I ultimately chose as the final image. It was the one shot right before. Some slight variations in lighting, but I have not touched this image yet. So this is as it came in, and we're going to go through the process and just see how it all comes through. And this will be in real time, so you'll see roughly how an edit goes. And just keep in mind, I'll be talking through it, so it does go a little bit faster when you're able to just knock things out one at a time. So do keep that in mind, and don't grade me on time on this one, because normally my edits are about 15 minutes or so. This is probably going to take just a hair longer, but we'll see what happens. So we're over in Lightroom now, and this is the picture. And like I said, the only thing that's been done is the lens correction, which, as we've talked about, it automatically gets imported into Lightroom based on my preferences to remove the chromatic aberration, enable profile corrections. It was shot on 70 to 200 2.8 Mark II. So all that is correct. It was shot at ISO 100, 80 millimeters at f11, quarter of a second. I had a polarizer filter on. Camera was tripod mounted. It was shot with a shutter release in the lull of a breeze. So that gives you all the background here. So what I do immediately, I look at the picture and just kind of remember what I was thinking when I shot it. First thing I was thinking of was, oh crap, this truck is in the shadows. So I was really worried about exposure here. But on the other end, I was worried about the exposure in the sky, which is very bright. So I had to balance it out to where I had a full histogram here in the camera. Nothing was clipping on the right-hand side, nothing clipping on the left-hand side. A couple pixels here and there, but that's easy enough to recover. This was on a 5DSR, old DSLR camera. So it's not the new mirrorless technology with 80,000 stops of dynamic range. This is, kind of a small dynamic range in comparison to what's out there today. But you will see that we were able to do pretty good with this camera. So I remember what I was thinking at the time. So that already tells me what I need to look for in this picture as far as an edit. I'm going to have to balance the darker areas and the brighter areas. So we'll just kind of go down this stack, and everything here is in order, kind of the way that I work it. The color temperature looks pretty good, but I'm going to warm it just a little bit. And I had it set for shade, if I'm not mistaken, on the camera. But I want a little bit more warmth in the scene. I'm going to fundamentally move the sun a little lower on the horizon, make it a little bit warmer light. Maybe boost that just a little bit, and we'll probably come back and fine tune that. Exposure's good, but I want to bring the highlights down. And something, about there is good. Don't want to bring them down too far. Let's bring the shadows up. And right now we're making a flatter image, but that's what I want to do. I want detail in the darker areas. I want detail in the brighter areas. So that's what we're doing. We're going to go down to the whites. We're already clipping there, so I'm not going to do anything else with that. let's bring the blacks down just a little bit. We've talked about all this, and feel free to go back through the library if you need refreshers on how to work these things. And since we've got a good amount of texture throughout the image, I'm going to go ahead and boost the texture globally right there. I'm not going to do anything with clarity, not touching vibrance or saturation just yet. Go down to the calibration. And I usually like to push my reds a little more to the orange. Start getting a little bit of saturation in the image here. And greens look okay. And let's see. Bring that down into the cyans just a little bit. Boost that saturation. So we're starting to see the colors already coming to life. So go into the color mixer and we just kind of look and see what all is going on. Let's just see. We'll take the targeted adjustment tool, go over here to the tree here in the back. And we're going to move some of the yellows into more of an orange. I want this to look a little bit more fall than it is. So we're not changing the colors, we're just changing the hue ever so slightly. Go over here to saturation. Same thing, we're going to bring those yellows up in saturation just a little bit, just to make this come to life. Come down to luminance. The greens, I want them to be more shadow-like, so I'm going to bring the luminance of the greens down ever so slightly because they had a little too much vibrance to them. And I think same thing with saturation. We're going to pull the saturation down on the greens just a little bit. There we go. Okay. So for right now, I think that's probably going to be what I need to do in the color mixer. Tone curve, let's go ahead and bring a little bit more light to the tree here in the background, which is going to increase the exposure throughout, but I'm going to introduce a curve and I'm going to bring these tones down. There we go. And I'm going to pull that saturation down. I think we're good on the deeper darks here. I don't want to boost the highlights because that's going to be the sky. I've got a different plan for that. Now with the color grading, I want to go ahead and bring a little bit, since I warmed the scene, I want to bring some coolness back into the shadows. So I don't want a lot of saturation, but something about there and about there will get me what I need. And the midtones, I want those warmed. So we're going to come back opposite of that blue. So we're making complementary colors because it's almost exactly opposite on the color wheel. And I'm going to add a little bit of saturation there. Okay, so now we're getting that look of the sunlight coming through at a little bit lower of an angle. And I'm going to increase the luminance in the midtones. Blending, I can come down this way and I can blend it more into the shadows, or I can blend the shadows more into the midtones. Because this is largely in the shadows, I kind of want to default it more to where the shadow blues have more of an effect. I want the warmer tones in the brighter areas. And same thing with the balance. I want to kind of move it to where it kind of fits what I'm wanting. And somewhere right about in there, I think looks good. Detail. I shot this at ISO 100. I don't expect there to be any noise. I haven't really done a whole lot of pumping up in the shadows. So I'm going to leave noise reduction alone here. There's really no need for it. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. And this was the area that I focused on. So I want to bring my sharpening up and just kind of look at it and wait until it starts to go a little overly crisp. So somewhere right about in there, I think looks good. Do Alt or Option on the Mac, left click on detail, and and I'm just going to bring the detail up a little bit. Don't want to go overboard. Okay, we're going to zoom back out. We're going to mask it, Alt or Option on a Mac. And remember, what's white is being sharpened, what is black is not. So I'm just wanting to get a good structure. I want to establish those edges. So that little bit of over sharpening that I did where it starts to get a little grainy, that no longer counts because those flat areas don't have any of the sharpening effect. Don't need to do anything with transform here. Go into effects, and we're going to give it a little bit of a vignette. Something about like that, and let's see. Yeah, let's do paint overlay because that's going to play a little bit nicer with the shadows. There we go. And just to see it on a smaller scale, make sure we're not overly vignetting it. I'll pull that left panel out, look at the small thumbnail. It looks fine. It's a little bit easier to see vignetting there. So essentially, that's my global edit done. So at this point, we're going to go in, we're going to hit the masks. These are the local masks, what we've been talking about for the last good while. Select subject, because I want to establish this truck right now. And I'm not going to do exposure work on this truck. I'll do that with a more gradual version. But what I do want to do is establish the clarity. And that's what I'm really dealing with on this truck in this particular mask. So it has identified the truck, and for all intents and purposes, I think we're good here. So we've already added texture globally, but I want to add clarity locally, just on the truck, just to make it pop. There we go. Okay, so we're going to title this Clarity. All right, create a new mask. This time we're going to do a radial gradient, and this is where I'm going to kind of pop the truck out a little bit with exposure. Make the radial gradient nice and big. We're going to bring this inner part back in so we have a huge feather and kind of put that main part there on the truck. And we're going to give it just a little bump, third of a stop. We'll call this focal because that's the focal point of the image. I want to do another radial. We're going to kind of do the same thing, but this time we're going to put it about there, and we're going to invert. And we're going to do more or less a custom vignette. Here we go. Call that vignette. All right. So this is actually looking pretty good. And with just these three masks, we've gone from this to this. I've now directed the eyes to look for the truck. Now we have to worry about the sky that's competing for the cab. The sky is a little too bright. So we're going to create a new mask. Color range. I can't do select sky, there's not enough of it, and Lightroom will just not have a fun time trying to find the sky. But we got the sky here that is blue. We come up here, we can refine these results until it is just pretty much there in the sky, but it's also grabbing the cab of the truck. So we subtract subject. And now we've removed the subject here, so this mask is just essentially those parts of the sky that are kind of bright. So we're going to start pulling this down just a little bit. Now I could have dropped the luminance in the HSL panel, but as you saw, the cab of the truck shared an awful lot of tones with that, so it would have been complicated. But at this point, I've dropped the exposure, not quite, about 2/3 of a stop, and highlights down about 31%. It's very subtle, but that's without this mask, and that's with the mask. And you see it really eliminated the highlights, but it kept the sky bright enough to where it works. So we're going to call this sky. And I want to bring the cab up just a little bit because, again, I want the brighter part of the scene, which is right here, to be the focal point. I don't want this competing too much. So I've dealt with half of it. So we're going to select subject again. And I want to go up here and intersect. So Alt or Option on a Mac, intersect. And I want to do, let's do luminance range. So I want to get the brighter areas. So there we go. So essentially we are doing a Dodge within the truck, which is ironically a Ford, not a Dodge. Go ahead and just boost that ever so slightly. Yeah, not quite a quarter of a stop, so just a little bit. We'll call this Truck Dodge. And for those that are keeping track, I'll make it a Ford. But we are actually dodging in this image. Okay. So one of the things that you run into with doing automotive photography is the windows. So I like to keep windows a little bit darker because I'm brightening the truck up, but the background I don't want as bright. So we're going to darken those areas just a little bit. So we're going to go with the brush. B brush, 100% flow. We're going to take the auto mask off for now because there's a lot of different variations within, and I'll go back and hit my edges here in a second. But I want to get the bulk of the window done without auto mask because it just makes it easier. So we got that. Make that a little bit smaller. And I could be doing this on my Wacom tablet very easily, but just because I'm not doing the gradual building, it's just as easy for me to do it on the mouse. But just know that you can do the Wacom and it would go just fine here. And we've got auto mask now, and I'm going back and kind of cleaning these edges up. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because we're not making a huge change. So keep that in mind. If you're going in and doing a very, very subtle change, the mask doesn't have to be exact. It's when you are changing colors or just really, really going nuts with an effect, that's when you need to make sure that the mask is exactly right. So that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go over here. We're going to drop the exposure. And like I said, a little bit more than a tenth. It brought a little bit too much warmth out. So we're going to go ahead, cool that back just a little bit, drop the saturation just a little. And there we go. Now we've got the glass. Now with the grass here in the foreground, I wanted to add a little bit more texture. I had global texture, but I really want to make those blades of grass pop. So the easiest way for me to do that is a linear gradient. And we're going to start it up about here. And we're just going to kind of make sure that the grass is the recipient of the highlighting. We'll go up here, subtract, select subject. It's going to pull what little bit of truck is in that mask out. There's not a lot. And I'm going to go in and add more texture. And do the space bar, zoom in, kind of take a look. Okay, see, we've now got, very great detail, just wonderful detail there in the grass. So I'm okay with that. So we'll call this grass. And now we're going to go and do another linear, starting outside of the frame. Hold the Shift key down. And remember, all of this is just feather. I want to keep the highlights kind of where they're at, but I want to drop the shadows just a little. So we're going to do this through the curve. Okay, something about there. Call this lower boundary. Now the tree up here already has enough darkening because of the natural shadow. There's no need for me to go in and do a closing of the scene up here in the tree. So that saves me a little bit of time and effort there. But let's go ahead, create a new mask, brush, and let's do the A brush this time. This is the one I have set for 30%. It's going to build up. Let's do half a stop. Let's add a little bit of clarity. Something up about like that. And we're going to come over and we're just going to work the tree. And remember, we're building this up. So it's not something that needs to be exact. We're just kind of bringing a little bit of life into this tree. Let's look at the eyeball on that. There's actually not a lot of detail here, so let's zoom in and see what we're working with. Okay, so there's really not that much detail here in the tree. So I don't really like the effect of bringing it out of shadow. So we'll go up here to the little 3 dots and we're just going to delete mask 1. So that takes care of the tree. We're back to being in shadow with it. And I'm good with that. This leading part of the hood here is a little distracting because it's a little too bright. So we're going to do a new mask, brush, A brush, that 30% flow. Let's drop the exposure, 1/3 of a stop, bring the highlights down a little bit. And let's just draw over the hood and bring those highlights down. This is one of the great things about brushes because you can do some very custom dodging and burning, which we just basically burned in the front of the hood. So I'm a fan of that. So we'll call that hood highlights. And that brings us to this hood ornament on here. So let's do a new mask, object, and we'll do the select a area as opposed to the freehand. And we're going to draw this box over here around this emblem. Let's see what Lightroom does with it. Give it a second. And survey says, okay, it gave us half. So we'll go up here, add a brush, B brush. Let's do the auto mask this time. And we're just going to go in and finish drawing in this object. Now, had Lightroom done its normal, really quick select of the object, we wouldn't have to do this. It saved us a little bit of time and effort, but we just have to go in and kind of fine-tune it, which we know that's always going to be a possibility. So with this mask, we're going to bring the highlights up just a little bit. We're going to bring the saturation up just a little bit, make that red pop a little bit more. There we go. And a little extra clarity. Something about like that. And we'll call this emblem. Okay, zoom back out. And let's see where we're at with the masks. Remember the eyeball up here next to masks? This will deactivate all of the masks. That's what we started with. That's where we're at now. This has all been done locally. That was after the global edit where I got a good sense of where the picture was going. That's after the local. So the local editing really, really brings this to life. And I cannot stress it enough. This is where you really get into the meat and potatoes of post-processing. And at this point, I'm relatively happy with it. We can go back to the basic tab and let's bring the vibrance up just a smidge. There we go. That's looking good. Overall saturation, will balance it. We'll bring it down just a little bit. But I see something else that I want to address. I want more yellow in that tree. So we're going to go up here, create a new mask, and let's do color range. And we're going to sample the tree. Okay, so now we've got these areas of more or less the yellow gold, at least that end of the green. We can refine. And I don't want to go quite there, so let's back off just a little bit. Okay, something like that. Now we can go in, let's try adding a little bit of warmth. Okay, that helps. Now we can go down to this little letter box here, and let's see if we add a little bit of a tint to it. We just go in here to the yellow to orange, and we can kind of play with the medicine dropper, move it around. But yeah, something like that looks good. And let's give it just a little bit more exposure. Okay. Tree. And of course, it picked up these same colors over here, the same tones down here in the grass, which kind of, it works because I want it to look like the sun down low, but I also want it to be natural. So I don't want to just completely change it. We can go down here. Let's try adding a little bit of red to it. And we're in the curve adjustment in the red channel. Okay, there we go. That's the trick. So we do the eyeball on the curve adjustment, and you see it's still got that kind of green to it. So I removed that by adding red, which is the opposite of cyan. So that's looking pretty good, and we can always do the backslash key on the keyboard. That takes us to the before. So that's what we started with. That's the raw image, and that's the edited image. We've got the vibrance and saturation looking good. Let's just see where the white values are. Still got a good bit there in the sky. And the black point, I'm good with that. You can see the yellow pixels up along the top. That's just where one of the three color channels is starting to clip on the shadow end. Got a couple of the color channels on the lower side, but we got some total black right here in this fender well. So I'm okay with that. But let's see what we can do with the sky. So we go back here to the sky mask. And with everything else, we're going to drop the white point just a little bit. Don't want to go too much because it will make it flat. Now you have to get out of the masks and go back to white and do the alter option on the keyboard. That helped a little bit. And really, it's just the areas that are pure white pixels. Those are the ones that are completely blown out. The blues, reds, greens, that's just part of those channels that are clipping. So there is still information there. And honestly, it is in these transition areas between the leaf and the sky. It's not something that's going to be noticed when you're printing. They are just random pixels. I'm okay with that just because I knew that this was going to be a stretch. I do have color showing in the sky, but there's no detail for me to worry about. My main concern was making sure that the truck was going to be exposed correctly. I'm happy with the exposure. Uh, one thing that we can do, we can go back in here, and this is part of it. You just kind of look at it and see what you want to be adjusted. And I want to make these wheels a little bit brighter, have a little bit more presence. And let's see, take that out, and we're going to right click, duplicate mask one. I haven't done anything with the mask yet, but I'm going to take this duplicate mask and I'm going to put it on the back wheel. And we're going to get it sized for that one. So we still have that one, and I want to subtract a brush, and we're going to do the B brush. Auto mask is fine. Take the grass out of it, and we're going to go here. Here we go. And the back one is actually a copy, and the reason that I did it that way was because they're going to pick up a little bit different light. And I want the front one to be a little bit more dominant. So something like that. And we'll call this one rear wheel. And if you're paying attention, you know that this front one is going to be called side wheel. I got you, didn't I? You thought I was going to go with front wheel. Nope, side wheel. All right, so I'm pretty well happy with this. Again, we'll go back and look at the before, look at the after. Oh wait, there's something that did pop up here. And I didn't catch this when I shot the picture, and that was my mistake. I probably should have got in a little bit closer, but since we are here, there was this edge of, I don't know, some kind of tank over here in the distance. So we'll go over here, get the remove tool, and let's start with the erase tool. And we'll go over here and we will just highlight this whole tank. And let's see what it does. It's thinking about it. Okay, didn't do a fantastic job. Let's check generative AI and let's have it generate Okay, there we go. All right, that works for me. So that was easy enough. And now everything looks great, with the exception of now we have this little red dot under the masks. And the computer just went dark. It'll come back up in a second. Hopefully the audio is still working and recording. Okay, if you're still with me, I apologize. When the computer's doing edits like this, especially the AI stuff, it will sometimes go blank just for a few seconds. It's a very old computer. It's working for what I need it to do, but doing video with it does tax it. But as I was saying, underneath the masks, we have this red dot. So what we need to do is open the masks back up, and it's going to have all of them here listed. And we need to go, it doesn't matter which one, but any one of these masks, hit this little 3-dot menu thing, come down to Update AI Masks. Basically, this is just saying that since we did object remove, or if you do clone stamp or healing, it could potentially alter some of the masks based on source material and that sort of thing. So it's going through and just making sure that all the masks are correct. Now that red dot that was here is now cleared out, showing that everything is good. So just keep that in mind. If you do anything with the remove tool, after you've done local edits. Um, if you know that there's something that needs to be removed, do it before you do the local edits, and that was something that I missed even when I did the edit on the other image. And here we go again. That's something that I missed before and didn't see it until I was looking at the image in the final version, and I had to edit that tank out, so I had to go through the same thing. But just remember, if you see this little red dot up here, just go and update the AI masks, and you're in good shape. So I think that pretty much brings us to the end. And hopefully you have learned a lot from these Tuesday's tips, going through everything from global to local edits. And I hope that if you were scared of doing edits before, that now at least you're not as scared and you might be willing to jump right in. This whole video, at least so far, is right at 36 minutes. And there was a little bit of introduction time. So it was about 30 minutes to get through that edit. Now, what I'll do at this point is I will norm my eyes. I'll step away from a little bit, come back and do any of the fine tuning that needs to be done, double check the colors, make sure I didn't go overboard on something, and just make sure that the image is the way that I want it. So keep that in mind. After we've stared at the computer for a while, we lose track of what real colors actually are. Go outside, check the mail, take the dog for a walk, do something other than sit in front of the computer for a few minutes, then come back and make any adjustments that need to be done. But thank you guys for joining me for this entire series. I do want Tuesday's Tips to continue on. I'll be doing other tips, not just image editing. Some of the ones that have just been conversations. We'll go and do some more of those. If there's anything that you would like me to cover, feel free to drop that in the comments, send me an email, whatever. I want to talk about things that are of interest to the audience. It's not just a matter of me talking into this camera for my health. I do enough talking to myself. I don't need to televise it. But yeah, I hope that this has helped and has benefited you. And if you want to go further with image editing, I do offer mentorships, and I can help you with your specific photography and your style of photography and trying to get the vision that you have for your images, not that I have for mine. But that also goes into, don't fall into the preset game. Don't think that, okay, I bought this preset from this photographer, I'm going to be able to edit an image like that photographer. It doesn't work that way, and presets are just, they're a great way for photographers to make easy money and take money out of your pocket. Learn how to edit, and then you can do your own thing. And then if you like the idea of presets, make your own. I don't, because each one of my photos is individual and I want to treat it as such. And I would never even edit the same photo the exact same way. It's just how I feel at the moment and what is going through my mind when I'm editing. So each time I edit, it's something fresh. And you can't do that if you are dealing with presets. Everything turns out to be very much cookie cutter, and it just, you're almost sharing credit with somebody else, because the edit is as much of the creative process as pressing the shutter button on your camera. And you don't want to go out there, let someone else take your picture, and then come home and edit their picture, because it's not going to be your total vision. Same thing as if you press the button and come and let somebody else edit your image. It's not your vision. Let your photography be what you envisioned and what you want and what your skills and talents will allow. And if you're not as skilled and talented as you'd like to be, there's no shame in that. We all grow as photographers. I hope to be better next year than I am right now. I hope to be a lot better in 5 years than I am right now. So don't look at that as a bad thing. Look at it as every time you do this process, you learn. you get better, you get more confident, you get quicker. So let your creativity be your creativity. Edit the way that you want to edit, but know how to edit and know what you need to do to achieve the look that you're going for. And that's the biggest thing and why I wanted to do this whole series in the first place. So thank you for joining me, and we will see you again here next week with another topic. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'm sure it'll be just riveting and on the edge of your seat, excitement. There might even be fireworks. Probably not. I'm not quite that exciting of a person. But let me know if there's something that you'd like me to cover, and we'll be back here next week. And until then, happy shooting, happy editing, and we'll see you later. Bye now.